The heated moment unfolded on live television, catching everyone off guard and sending shockwaves through the audience. The situation quickly escalated, with one of the individuals involved showing clear signs of frustration, while the other, seemingly caught off guard, tried to maintain composure. What began as a typical interaction quickly morphed into something more intense as emotions ran high and the tension between the two became undeniable. What made this confrontation especially gripping was the rawness of the exchange. It was unfiltered, unscripted, and entirely unanticipated by those watching at home. In the early moments, everything seemed relatively normal. Both figures, well known for their on-screen charisma and long-lasting careers, appeared to be engaged in what seemed like a typical conversation for a televised event. But as the dialogue unfolded, it became clear that things weren't as simple as they initially appeared. One of the men began to express his growing impatience, his body language shifting from casual to confrontational. His tone became more pointed, and his words, though carefully chosen, carried a weight that suggested deeper dissatisfaction. The other, clearly caught off guard, initially attempted to deflect the tension with humor, perhaps as a way of diffusing the situation. But the growing frustration from his counterpart made it impossible to ignore the mounting tension in the room. It was a clash of personalities, where one was more outspoken, fiery, and unwilling to back down, while the other tried to remain calm and composed, though it was becoming more difficult by the second. What was striking about the moment was the contrast in how each man handled the escalating situation. The first individual's reaction was unapologetically fierce. He didn't shy away from expressing his anger, letting his emotions take center stage. His eyes narrowed, his voice sharpened, and the frustration was evident in every word he spoke. The other man, visibly taken aback, seemed to realize that this was no ordinary disagreement. It was a moment of vulnerability, exposing an underlying tension that had clearly been building for quite some time, even though it had never been so publicly aired. As the exchange grew more heated, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The audience, initially unsure of what was happening, began to sense the drama unfolding. The body language of both men told a story of its own. The one who was more confrontational leaned in, his presence demanding attention, while the other recoiled slightly, his attempts to maintain composure becoming more strained. It was almost as though a power struggle had emerged right before everyone's eyes, and neither was willing to give up ground. The most striking element of the encounter was the sheer unpredictability of it all. The two had a history, yes, but it had never seemed so volatile. While tensions had simmered over the years, there was never any indication that it would explode into something so visceral and public. The clash wasn't just a personal disagreement, it felt almost symbolic of a broader clash of egos and ideologies. One individual seemed intent on asserting dominance, while the other tried to balance out the scales with restraint. As the confrontation reached its peak, there was a moment of silence, a brief lull in the chaos. For just a second, it seemed as if the two might come to an understanding, or at the very least back down from their positions. But that didn't happen. The silence was only temporary, and soon the fury resumed, this time even more intense than before. The exchange became a testament to the power of raw emotion, where words became less important than the message being sent. That one of them was not going to stand for being disrespected or dismissed, no matter the cost. What made the moment even more significant was that it was all happening in real time, in front of cameras and an audience. The stakes were high because neither man could control the narrative once the exchange had gone public. The cameras captured every gesture, every expression, and every word, ensuring that nothing was left to the imagination. The raw emotion displayed on camera couldn't be undone, and the aftermath was destined to be just as explosive as the confrontation itself. As the moment played out, viewers at home were left to process the shock of what they were witnessing. This wasn't some scripted performance or carefully crafted drama. It was real, visceral, and intensely personal. What made it even more riveting was that both men, so accustomed to public scrutiny and the spotlight, were now exposed in a way that few could have predicted. This wasn't just another television moment, it was a raw, unfiltered look into the human experience, where pride, frustration, and vulnerability collided. The impact of the incident was undeniable, as it quickly gained traction across social media platforms, becoming a viral sensation in a matter of hours. What began as a tense moment during a televised event turned into an internet phenomenon, with the footage being shared, reposted, and discussed by millions. As the clip spread, it didn't just circulate among fans of the two individuals involved, but it caught the attention of a broader audience who may have never previously followed their careers. The incident became a cultural moment that transcended its original context, sparking widespread conversation on social media, news outlets, and online forums. The viral nature of the footage was immediate and intense. Within minutes, people were commenting on the raw emotion displayed, the intensity of the exchange, and the sheer surprise of witnessing such an outburst. In an age where social media has the power to amplify even the smallest moments, this event became a perfect storm for virality. The clip was shared across platforms like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, where millions of users viewed it, reacted to it, and added their own commentary. Memes, parodies, and reaction videos soon followed, each adding to the narrative and ensuring that the story reached even more people. The viral spread wasn't limited to a single platform or demographic. People from all walks of life weighed in, sharing their own thoughts on the matter. Some took to Twitter to express shock and disbelief at the confrontation, while others on Reddit dissected every detail, from the body language of both individuals to the tone of their voices. The footage wasn't just a fleeting moment. It sparked intense discussions about pride, ego, and the power dynamics at play between two Hollywood heavyweights. It was as though people were not just reacting to the confrontation itself, but also speculating about the deeper motivations behind it. The viral spread also prompted many to reflect on the personalities of the two men involved. Longtime fans of their work began to discuss the underlying tensions that may have been present for years, but never surfaced in such a public way. Some argued that the event was a long time coming, pointing to previous interviews or interactions that hinted at underlying issues. Others questioned whether the tension was the result of a single, isolated incident, or whether it was a culmination of a much longer-standing frustration. Regardless of the interpretation, the moment had become more than just a heated argument. It had evolved into a social media spectacle that left people with more questions than answers. What also contributed to the viral nature of the moment was the widespread reaction from celebrities and public figures. Many took to their own social media accounts to comment on the event, sharing their thoughts or offering humorous takes on the situation. Some offered their support for one side, while others chose to remain neutral, but the discussions online took on a life of their own. Fans began to divide themselves into factions, with each side defending their favorite in what became an unofficial battle between two cultural icons. The internet has always had a tendency to turn such moments into larger-than-life events, and this one was no exception. The viral nature of the incident also highlighted the ever-growing influence of digital media in shaping public perception. In the past, such an exchange might have remained a brief blip on the radar, only discussed by those who witnessed it firsthand. Today, however, the ability for a single moment to be captured, shared, and commented on by millions ensures that nothing remains private for long. The reach of social media means that a brief incident can be transformed into a global discussion within hours, and this was exactly what happened in this case. The video had gone from a tense exchange between two individuals to a worldwide talking point, amplified by the constant loop of reposts, reactions, and retweets. As the days went on, the viral video continued to gain traction, with mainstream media outlets picking up the story and covering it in greater detail. What initially began as a small clip had now become a cultural touchstone, with even news anchors and talk show hosts weighing in on the situation. The viral moment had moved beyond the realm of social media and into the broader conversation of pop culture. It was no longer just about the two men involved. It had morphed into a larger discussion about celebrity feuds, personal conflict, and the nature of fame itself. It was a reminder of how quickly something can go viral in the digital age and how even the most seemingly private moments can become public spectacles. In the midst of all this, the exchange itself began to take on a symbolic meaning. It wasn't just a personal argument. it was seen as a reflection of larger cultural themes. The viral spread of the incident led to discussions about authenticity, vulnerability, and the pressures of living life in the public eye. What people were really responding to wasn't just the drama itself, but the way in which the two men had, in their own way, exposed their most human sides. The incident became a mirror for the audience, reflecting their own frustrations, expectations, and emotional reactions in a way that few moments in the public eye could achieve. The tension between the two had been simmering for a long time, but it was never fully apparent until the live television confrontation exposed it in all its raw, unfiltered form. What viewers witnessed was not just a fleeting moment of anger. It was a culmination of years of subtle and not-so-subtle interactions that had been building beneath the surface. Behind the scenes, there had always been an unspoken rivalry, a competition of sorts between the two individuals, even if it was never publicly acknowledged. For years, they had shared the same space in Hollywood, both dominating their craft in unique ways. But the personal dynamic between them, shaped by their egos and differing approaches to life and work, had created an undercurrent of tension that had occasionally bubbled to the surface in private settings, even though it had never quite erupted in front of an audience. The relationship between the two wasn't built on mutual admiration or camaraderie, despite what some might have assumed. Instead, it was a complex, layered bond marked by competition and rivalry, each individual striving to outdo the other, whether consciously or not. The work they did often overlapped, with both being deeply entrenched in the same industry, vying for similar roles, accolades, and recognition. They had both reached the pinnacle of their careers, yet each was aware of the other's power and influence in Hollywood. And while they may have appeared to coexist relatively peacefully in public, the reality was that there was a long history of subtle disagreements, clashes of philosophy, and unspoken jostling for the top spot. The incident itself wasn't an isolated moment of conflict, it was merely the final spark that ignited what had been a long-standing tension. There had been countless moments in the past when both had felt slighted or undermined by the other, but those moments had either been overlooked or brushed aside, with each person choosing to move forward, often out of necessity. The entertainment industry, with its demanding schedules and high stakes, doesn't always allow time for reconciliation or emotional processing. As a result, any lingering animosity between the two had been buried beneath layers of professional courtesy and the need to maintain a public image of mutual respect. However, this facade could only hold for so long, and the confrontation on live TV exposed the cracks in their relationship that had been ignored for years. The pressure of the moment, the live cameras, and the audience watching from home brought everything to the surface in a way that no one could have anticipated. What made it particularly explosive was that neither individual was willing to back down, each one holding firm to their position, unwilling to concede or show vulnerability. One, known for his fierce independence and unapologetic nature, seemed ready to confront the other head-on, demanding that his viewpoint be heard. The other, while more reserved, clearly wasn't prepared for such an onslaught, and as the moment unfolded, it became clear that their differences were irreconcilable at that point. For those who had been close to both individuals, the signs were always there. Their interactions behind closed doors, the occasional snide comment, or the brief moments of icy silence during collaborative projects were all telltale signs of a strained relationship. But in the public eye, both had managed to maintain a professional facade, their differences never fully acknowledged, let alone addressed. The situation at hand, however, forced both individuals to reckon with those unresolved issues, and once the cameras were rolling, all pretense was stripped away. There was no hiding from the reality of their relationship, no spinning the narrative to fit the idealized version of their camaraderie. In the aftermath, many speculated that the confrontation was a long time coming. Both had been at the top of their game for decades, each navigating the complexities of fame, power, and public scrutiny. Their paths had crossed many times over the years, but those moments of intersection had often been fleeting, passing without much fanfare. However, this exchange made it clear that their professional relationship was anything but cordial. The personal and professional lines had become increasingly blurred, and what was once a working partnership based on mutual respect had evolved into something far more complicated and strained. The pressure to live up to public expectations and maintain a perfect image likely played a part in the eventual explosion. Both individuals were well aware of the stakes. Failure to meet those expectations could lead to a tarnished reputation, a loss of power, or worse, the end of their careers. But in that moment, all the years of pent-up frustration and rivalry took over, and neither was willing to allow the other to come out on top. The animosity was no longer something that could be ignored or brushed aside. It had reached a boiling point, and once the conflict erupted, there was no turning back. What had once been a subtle, unspoken tension had finally been brought into the light, leaving everyone who witnessed it to wonder if it could ever be repaired or if this was the final chapter in their fractured relationship. After the live television confrontation, the fallout was immediate and intense. Reactions varied widely, with some expressing full support for one of the individuals involved, while others believed the entire exchange had been unnecessary and out of line. The public spectacle had left everyone talking, not only about the event itself, but also about the larger implications it held for the two figures at the center of it all. What began as a personal disagreement soon spiraled into a widespread debate about power, ego, and the nature of public feuds. The moment forced people to take sides, and in doing so, it revealed the deeply entrenched divisions between those who supported each individual's actions and those who felt the whole thing was a spectacle that shouldn't have happened. For some, the fiery exchange was seen as justified. They viewed it as a long overdue assertion of authority, a display of personal boundaries that needed to be defended. These supporters argued that the individual who had shown intense emotion was simply standing up for themselves in a high-pressure situation where their integrity was at stake. The confrontation, from this perspective, was framed as a necessary expression of frustration that had been building for years, a breaking point that was inevitable given the circumstances. For these individuals, the response was not only understandable, but commendable. It was a moment of personal empowerment in the face of perceived disrespect. On the other hand, there were those who felt that the outburst was disproportionate and harmful, even if the tension had been building for some time. They believed that such a confrontation, especially in such a public setting, was out of place and poorly timed. This group contended that, no matter the underlying issues, the dramatic display of anger on camera was unprofessional and could only serve to damage the reputation of both individuals involved. The idea of airing personal grievances in front of a live audience, many of whom were not privy to the history behind the conflict, seemed distasteful. It was a breach of decorum that many felt was damaging to both the integrity of the people involved and the nature of their long-standing public personas. In the aftermath, the narrative quickly became about the implications of their actions. People began to ask questions about the broader context of celebrity rivalries and the pressures that come with being in the public eye. This incident wasn't just a one-off display of frustration, it was a reflection of something much deeper. Public figures, particularly those who have been in the spotlight for as long as the two in question, often have to contend with constant expectations, both from their fans and from the media. The fallout from the confrontation highlighted how such pressures can manifest in unpredictable ways, especially when emotions are pushed to their limit. The aftermath also sparked a larger conversation about how the media and public tend to sensationalize such moments. The footage, once it had gone viral, was dissected from every angle, with commentators, pundits, and social media users offering their opinions on what had happened, why it happened, and what it meant. Every gesture, every word, every pause was analyzed in detail. Some suggested that the entire incident had been a publicity stunt, a manufactured piece of drama meant to generate buzz and keep the two individuals relevant in an increasingly competitive and attention-driven entertainment industry. Others, however, saw it as an example of something much more authentic, a rare moment where the carefully curated facades of Hollywood stars were stripped away, revealing the messy human side of fame. As the days wore on, the incident continued to dominate headlines. The event was covered extensively in the entertainment press, with detailed breakdowns of the interaction, each one adding more layers to the story. The narrative quickly became about more than just the confrontation itself. It became a story about celebrity culture, about the immense pressure that comes with being constantly under the public's gaze, and about how difficult it can be to maintain a composed image when personal feelings are involved. In the end, the conversation wasn't only about the two people at the heart of the drama, but about the larger cultural phenomenon they represented. Some even began to wonder if this incident signified the end of a particular era in Hollywood. Was this kind of public confrontation an anomaly, or was it a sign of a broader shift in how the entertainment industry works? Was it a breakdown of the old guard of stars who once maintained a certain level of decorum and professionalism, or was it simply an isolated incident that had been blown out of proportion? The fallout from the exchange raised more questions than it answered, leading to further speculation about the future of both individuals and their roles in the industry. Would this incident be remembered as a moment of personal growth, a necessary confrontation that ultimately cleared the air? Or would it mark the beginning of the end for the once seemingly unbreakable public image they had spent years building? Regardless of where people stood on the issue, there was no denying that the exchange had left a lasting impact. It forced both individuals to reckon with their public personas, their relationships with each other, and the way they were perceived by millions of fans and critics alike. In the end, the fallout from the confrontation was as much about the repercussions on their personal lives as it was about the public's consumption of the moment. The controversy would linger, and the questions about what had truly happened would remain unanswered for some time. In the end, the confrontation between the two figures left an indelible mark, both on their careers and on the public's perception of them. What started as a moment of personal frustration turned into something far greater, a spectacle that captured the attention of millions and sparked conversations that would continue long after the cameras stopped rolling. It was a rare, raw glimpse behind the polished facades of two of Hollywood's most iconic figures, revealing just how much tension can build beneath the surface, even among those who have seemingly conquered the entertainment industry. 3. Aftermath of the incident highlighted the complex nature of fame and the pressures that come with it. For years, both individuals had been in the spotlight, their every move scrutinized by the public and the media. In many ways, they had built their careers on being larger-than-life figures, but in that moment, the human side of their personalities came crashing through. This wasn't just about a dispute. It was a reminder that even the most famous and successful people have their breaking points. For those who had watched them for years, the confrontation was a sobering reminder that there is a fine line between maintaining control in the face of external pressure and letting emotions spill over in the most public of ways. What made the situation even more significant was the way in which it quickly became a focal point for broader discussions about celebrity culture. The moment was dissected endlessly by fans, critics, and industry insiders alike, who all tried to make sense of what had transpired. Some saw it as a necessary release of pent-up frustrations, while others believed it was a regrettable misstep that damaged both individuals' public images. Either way, the event had exposed the human fragility of those who live their lives in the spotlight, reminding audiences that fame doesn't necessarily protect anyone from vulnerability. The viral nature of the incident only added to its significance. In today's digital age, moments like these don't just disappear. They are amplified, reshaped, and reinterpreted by millions of voices online. The incident was everywhere, and the endless commentary it generated ensured that the story was not only a fleeting news item, but a topic that would be revisited time and again. It was a reflection of how quickly our culture can shift and how one moment can change the trajectory of a career, especially when the stakes are high and the audience is so vast. For the two individuals involved, the long-term consequences were impossible to predict. In the immediate aftermath, it was clear that both would have to navigate the fallout carefully. How they handled the situation moving forward would determine whether the incident would be seen as a moment of growth or as a public relations disaster. The path forward would require both of them to address the fallout, either through public statements or by letting their actions speak louder than any words could. But regardless of what happened next, it was certain that their lives and careers had been forever altered by that single moment on live television. In many ways, the confrontation underscored a larger truth about the nature of celebrity and the challenges faced by those in the public eye. It wasn't just a personal dispute. It was a reflection of the larger forces at play in an industry where egos, expectations, and external pressures collide. In this sense, the moment became a symbol of something far bigger than the individuals involved, a reminder of the complexities of fame and the very real struggles that come with living a life under constant scrutiny.